Thank you very much. When we got this email from ELETS about 4 days back, saying that we'd been designated for an award, perhaps, we said, who are they? Let me find out a little bit more about them. And then we started talking, and I think there was a fair amount of interest in in some of the things that we were trying to do. So I said, perhaps this is a forum where I can speak for a few minutes about what we are trying to do in Public Diplomacy Division and how we've been able to bring social media and some of the new technologies to really... What is public diplomacy about? Let's try to get a clear definition that what is it that we're trying to do? That it's a set of activities by which we try to seek influence public attitudes. Publics, both in India and abroad. Earlier, our focus used to be abroad only, but in the context of a democracy that we are, in the context of a global environment that we live in, where international issues ranging from WTO to the nuclear deal to terrorism to climate change to whatever else impinge upon us, it's important that we interact within our own domestic constituencies as well. And so we started saying, what is the best way to go about it? And looking at digital tools, it seemed to us that these were the right way to proceed in terms of the constituencies that we wanted to target. And one of the things that is so key about public diplomacy, we think that when we want to disseminate information, all we need to do is speak. But actually, communication is as much about listening as it is about speaking, whether you look at the interlocutors in Kashmir these days or whatever else. And a question that we posed is, of course, if you don't listen, how do you frame a message? How do you address your target audience? And what are the tools that you can do for listening? Now, some of these are fairly well known in public opinion surveys, in content analysis of what countries think of you, what media thinks of you. And then there's the whole range of new tools. So that was a question that we posed, that are we even using the right tools to listen to what people think about us? Are we using the right channels? And our conclusion at the start of this year when we embarked on this road was that most of what we did was really aimed at people like us. And we were making no conscious effort from our side to reach out to the under 30, which is not only a present demographics in our own country, but future opinion leaders in countries around the world. And certainly, even though we had a website in Ministry of External Affairs of sorts, we were very much stuck in the Web 1 age when the whole world was moving towards Web 2. And in the small but growing field of public diplomacy practitioners, there is this mantra that Web 2 is really a godsend for public diplomacy, because where else at minimal cost can you try and get your message across to diverse audiences? Where else, if you get lucky, can you succeed in creating a viral impact? And where else can you target that crucial under 30 demographics? And the reason I come to that demographics again is that for me, a sort of wake-up call was a conversation with my daughter, who's 24. And she's very plugged in. She reads newspapers. She knows what's going on in the world. But all of that she does is online. And I realized that we could have a public diplomacy division, but nothing that we did was remotely of interest to her. And the question was, if I cannot be in her space or that of people like her, how do I get my message across? I don't even get past first base. So partly this was that, if I can't influence my daughter, what hope do I have as a public diplomat to influence anybody else of that generation? And the final element that we wanted to try and bring out, apart from listening, apart from trying to target the youth, apart from using the channels that new media gives you to reach out to diverse audiences, was, can we actually use new media to change the narrative? We see ourselves, particularly when we are in government, often due to faults of ours, but often also due to no fault of ours, being the favorite target of the media. Now, I recognize the old adage that what bleeds leads. So if it's a negative story, the chances are that it will make it to the top of the news. If it's a positive story, maybe less so. But some introspection shows us that we actually haven't created a positive story. There is a lot that we do which is good in government, but if we don't talk about it, how do people know about it? And if there's no countervailing positive narrative, then obviously the overwhelming narrative is negative, and that feeds into a cycle of cynicism and skepticism about government. And it is not as if all of government is malintentioned. In the context of diplomats, this is a particularly tough challenge because we are brought up on a needs to know tradition. And everything is secret. And to shift that to a need to share mindset, where you tell your colleagues, please reflect, have you done something today which is useful and which can be shared with people? If it can, how do we put it out? And so partly the journey begins with different platforms. Now, this audience needs no introduction to Twitter, I'm sure, but in Ministry of External Affairs, Twitter was a slightly touchy subject for reasons that you are aware of. Thanks to my colleague Abhay, who's sitting here, we started the Twitter account in July, and we were told, is this even legal, what you're doing? And we kind of said, okay, we'll figure that one out later. But to me, the response that we got to a tweet when we started the Twitter account was something like this. This was on the first 3 days that we opened our Twitter account. People started following us that we didn't know, and people that we didn't know started giving us comments like these. And it showed to you that there was a void out there that we could plug into, exactly the constituency that we had completely missed out on. Now, if I just go back, yesterday, and it plugs into the positive narrative thing, our mission, our embassy in Buenos Aires started this Visa over Coffee initiative. And if I show you, we put out a tweet this morning, and these are the kind of reactions that we got to it. And I say this because our ambassador in Buenos Aires has been doing this. The internet doesn't seem to be. Okay. Maybe it is. Our ambassador has been doing this Visa over Coffee thing for several months now, but if you don't put out the story, how do people know that it's happening? So partly our endeavor is to see if we can create these narratives, get them out in the public domain, and see can we, as public diplomacy practitioners, actually change the terms of the discourse on the subject. I think the net is a bit slow, so maybe I will not. It's happening? Okay. So this is a visual, for example, of our visa section in our embassy in Buenos Aires, and this is a visa applicant who's looking at a book on India and having a cup of coffee while behind glass doors in a very transparent way, the visa officer is processing the visa. And in fact, this is what the sign on in the visa section says. We have many of these stories, and I give this just as an example, both on the need for us to talk about what we do, but also to show that the reactions that it can promote in a fairly short amount of time. We had to overcome resistance internally to the Twitter, as I was saying. So we had to say that, look, we are not aliens who've come from somewhere who are trying to do some strange things. There are all those people who are also on Twitter, and so there is nothing to particularly be afraid of. but it means breaking down resistances. We did the same on Facebook, again to create visuals, to create stories. I was told at one point that suddenly in central government at least, we were amongst the only ones who were using Twitter and Facebook. And to break down resistance, I had to show them the Prime Minister's Facebook page. I won't go into it over here, but a secret is that even people in government in fairly responsible positions didn't know that there was a page existing, which is fairly decent, up-to-date page of the Prime Minister. We started with YouTube. We created an Indian diplomacy channel on YouTube. We have a number of documentaries. We edited them down into short versions of 5 or 6 minutes each. I would love to show it, but I'm apprehensive about the net speed, that it might take forever to load it, so I'll skip it. But you can go and check at youtube.com/Indian Diplomacy, and you'll see about 20 of our documentary films in short edited versions on Afghanistan, on Central Asia, on street foods of India, on a range of different topics. And we can see the traction that we are getting in terms of the number of views. We publish a magazine called India Perspectives. We do a good job. We do it in 17 languages. But we said, let's put it on Scribd as a trial. And within a special issue on Tagore, within the first 10 days or so, over 2,000 people had read it on Scribd. In fact, our first tweet was that India Perspectives Tagore issue is now on Scribd. And from there we took off. And then we also used issue and started placing it there. It's gathering momentum. Suneet, who's sitting here, represents CDAC, Mohali. And we worked with them to set up our new website. And that, I think I might be brave enough to, nope, take a chance. It's indiandiplomacy.in. What we are trying to do with the website is, in a sense, it's disruptive because we are trying to break traditional patterns of reporting between missions and headquarters. Traditionally, if you are, say, the ambassador in Washington, you will report to the Americas desk. And if you are the ambassador in Moscow, you will report to the East Europe desk. All the good work that you do comes to the territorial division, and therein dies a natural death. What we wanted to do was, if there is stuff that you've done which is worth sharing, can we actually start talking about it? There's 3 kinds of narratives that we want to try and build, and for which we want to use the website as a platform. The first is on India's soft power. The kind of stories that we hear, the kind of experiences that we have when we serve overseas. We started looking at this with some degree of seriousness. In a country like Bulgaria, our ambassador is doing a Namaste Bollywood festival. In Colombia, little kids are celebrating Gandhi Jayanti. In Moscow, there is a disco singer who sort of imitates Mithun Chakravarti, and I'm a disco dancer. In Senegal, there's an all-black group of Francophone Africans who every Friday belt out Bollywood songs at a nightclub. They've never been anywhere near India. In South Africa, there's a Zulu who has done Kathak as a professional and has even performed at Kamani. So there are all sorts of stories that we see, and we want to see whether we can start talking about the impact and reach of Indian soft power through yoga, through Ayurveda, through films, through cuisine and everything else. The second area that we want to focus on is development partnerships. And this one really bugs me because we do a lot. We have this Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program. Every year, we bring 5,000 foreigners fully funded by us to train in India in a vast range of disciplines. It's a 100 crore rupee program. We spend next to nothing on publicizing it. So what we've done is hired freelance journalists or other professionals to go and make a story out of it. That don't do a press release. Go do a couple of interviews, get some pictures, get some video if you can. And what we want to do is, through this process, create awareness of all that India does in skills development, etc. And finally, the third major area for us is to start talking about the numerous activities of our missions. Whether it is business conferences, whether it is cultural festivals, whether it is interface with the Indian community, it is public lectures at universities, a whole host of things that we do in our professional lives, but which is opaque to the public, and to see whether we can start talking about that in some interesting way. We've tried to make this site as user-friendly as possible from our perspective. We've embedded almost 50 different ways to share the information from this website. So it's not just Facebook, it's not just Orkut or Twitter, but everything else as well. We've created space to subscribe to it by SMS and email. We've embedded Google Translate into it so that, particularly from an overseas perspective, you can go in and, I don't know how many have used, but for example, if you go into French, I think to about an 80% accuracy currently, it rapidly translates the content into French or into German or into 50 languages. So these are some of the things that we've tried to do. Coming back to my original theme, that if we can accomplish 4 objectives through our digital diplomacy initiatives. 1, create a more informed discourse on foreign policy issues. Enable people to understand the nuances of some of the issues more effectively. 2nd, reach out to the youth, which is a constituency that we have missed out completely on. 3rd, to really, the kind of partnerships that we are trying to forge, the kind of channels that we are trying to use to get the information out to diverse audiences. And finally, as I said, the most ambitious challenge that we've set ourselves is whether we can actually influence the public discourse on issues, whether we can influence the narrative as far as at least in a limited sense, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs as a microcosm of the Government of India is concerned. Thank you very much.